Trees, Alternative Virtual Reality.
So, yeah, here we are. Thanks for joining me, the Woodsman.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Both VR and psychedelics are things I'm super passionate about, so I think there's a lot to talk about.
Indeed. There are two fascinating concepts that, I mean, each are worthy of a conversation in themselves, just in conceptual terms. Both presenting worlds, both presenting in ways that also can be discussed, illusions to certain degrees. In other ways, they are not illusions. I can give an introduction to those who are either listening in the podcast version or watching here at YouTube. I came in contact with the Woodsman after a post I made on Reddit at a subreddit that is called RiftIntoTheMind. And this is a subreddit that we briefly discussed it in the last episode, but it's a subreddit dedicated to enthusiasts of both VR and psychedelics, and the combination of these. So a rift into the mind is, well, it's a cool name, and it's very appropriate. Yeah, and the Woodsman here agreed to have a chat about these things. So yeah, I mean, what is your thought on this? What is your relationship with the Rift into the Mind subreddit and VR and psychedelics and everything?
Well, yeah, I think the core of it is that both psychedelics and VR sort of tricks you play in your mind to change the world around you or make it seem like the world around you has changed. So when you combine the two, you do a really good job tricking your mind. And I'm thinking back, I had the first time I ever mixed psychedelics with VR, I had taken a couple tabs of acid, and I spent the entirety of a trip in VR. And the point of VR is immersion, right? Is losing yourself and having conversations like this where you act naturally, move naturally, and it feels like the real world. And after maybe an hour or so of this trip, I had forgotten about the real world and existed in this virtual reality world. And that kind of true immersion is just incredible. I mean, I've never felt like I was part of the future until trying these things together. It feels like you are teleported to another place, and that's something incredible.
Yeah, that's intense. At that point, did you have any VR experience from beforehand? Did you own VR?
I had messed around with a couple of VR devices and owned a VR device for maybe a month at that point. So relatively limited experiences with VR, but maybe a bit more than the average person. And I spent the duration of a trip with a buddy of mine who programs for VR and actually works on kind of the programming side of VR research. So he's super intimately familiar with it, and it's great to have a guide like that, someone to help you through figuring out all the things and allowing the experience to kind of flow naturally.
Yeah, that's cool. Something that can be said of both VR and psychedelics is that it's something that has to be experienced, and maybe especially for psychedelics that it's hard to convey the experience in words. But I mean, I remember my first VR experience that sort of really got me truly immersed and like, okay, wow, this is a thing. This is going to be a thing. I was at the mountain and sort of looking down and found that, I couldn't step outside of the bounds. I just wouldn't want to. So it had a grip on me. And it's this...
Yeah, the butterflies in your stomach.
Yes, definitely. Of course, I'm afraid of heights in real life as well. But I think the same thing is this case for psychedelics. You cannot ignore it, right? It has a power in its immersing effects or its illusion, what it's doing to your mind. So this combination, in what ways did the VR experience change under the influence of, well, 2 tabs of acid?
Good question. The limitation on VR right now, in my opinion, is the hardware associated with it. You know, things are blurry. There's the screen door effect, etc. And those things just kind of fade away when you're not paying attention to them. And that can happen in a really, really immersive, good VR game. But it's way easier to experience when you're on a substance which, you know, allows you to flow naturally through the world, allows experiences to become more real and relatable. So we started in an app called the Wave VR, which is a really neat app that I suggest anybody with VR check out. It has 3D audio visualizers, and having that sensory stimulation of music and these wild visuals and the social aspect as well, just kind of caused the virtual part of it to fade away, and it, you know, feels more and more like a reality. And it's something that you notice when you're playing VR for an extended period of time, but it's something that's especially true when you take kind of this shortcut to immersion of a psychedelic.
Yeah, I think I understand what you mean, because like you said, a good game can do it. It takes design. It's not just the visual aspect of the environment that makes you forget where you are. I mean, of course it can be that too, but when you're reading a book, you can also be really immersed in the sense of feeling present towards an alternative world. And also, which psychedelics is really known to induce, is the feeling of flow, right? Of flowing and being together, merging with environments, and sort of not having the like talking guy inside your head trying to refigure the way that you view reality or thinking about thinking, and
reduction of ego, right?
Yeah. So maybe you can float easier into the environments in that way. Or, how would you...
Absolutely. There's less meta-analysis going on of the things that are around you. There's less thinking about what you should do or what looks weird or what's off, and more thinking about like what looks amazing, what feels right, what, you know, seems correct.
Yeah.
One area that VR has really allowed me to explore with that is socializing with other people while on psychedelics. That's something that's, you know, very, very stressful normally, because you take an illegal drug and go out in public, and now you're risking all sorts of negative side effects. But in VR, you can socialize with complete strangers, and there aren't consequences. And that's something that's made famous by something like VR chat. But it's something that is especially interesting when you're in a state where you normally you don't feel, or I don't feel, comfortable socializing. So kind of increasing that social salience, especially with strangers, I think is a really cool aspect of VR. It's something I was thinking about regarding VR therapy, which of course is, or regarding psychedelic therapy, which of course is a field that's been growing by leaps and bounds in the past 5 years, at least in the United States, but certainly the research is reaching worldwide. You know, we've seen studies where 60% of alcoholics and 80% of cigarette smokers, perhaps it's the other way around, who try mushrooms once in a controlled setting with a psychedelic therapist within a year or in a year or have no problems with addiction anymore.
Yeah, it's so insane.
It's
there are no
insane.
results like that in any other intervention.
Exactly, and it's something that you know, is illegal in the in the entirety of the United States and the vast majority of the world. But it's something that perhaps people could experience through VR from the safety or relative safety of their homes. I'm curious to see how it develops and if it outstrips the law as some sort of psychedelic therapy that people could experience, in a setting like this.
Yeah, it's a really good point that you can, I mean, like you said, from the comfort of your home. There are, of course, I'm not really understanding those psychedelic clinics where you are going to like go into some sort of hospital and lay in like some sort of hospital bed taking taking mushrooms or acid. It doesn't seem like, I mean, set and setting is like the pillars for a good trip for a good reason. So being able to facilitate for some kind of home exploring, but still be able to, yeah, have experiences like being social, perhaps having like a, yeah, pretty environment where you can be in. Yeah, exactly. And many people can't do that either. I mean, in terms of regular tripping, because they are maybe living in like a big city, and you can't easily access nature, and yeah.
Yeah, so, and there are things that nobody can access too. Fly through space, view another planet, things like that. That could potentially be very helpful for someone who needs a good trip, who can benefit greatly from a good trip.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of there is some research going on like the overview effect. I think it's called that, like based on the first astronauts who went to the moon and sort of were able to see planet Earth from outside, and like, wow.
I think you cut out there.
Oh, sorry. I'll go again. What you're saying is reminding me of the overview effect. Like when I think they named it after the astronauts who were first at the moon and sort of looked at the Earth and, yeah, got the overview effect. Like, wow, all of our problems are on this little dot, all of our experiences, etc. And psychedelics are also known to sort of you get the distance from your own little personal narrative then and there and go outside. But VR can also help in providing a perspective in terms of who we are, where we are. I just tried this app. We're going to release a video, and it's called The Order of Magnitude, sort of showing first our small planet, and then like how small that is compared to the galaxy, and how small the galaxy is compared to that, and it just goes on and on and on. It seems like something that could be interesting to take while tripping.
Yeah, that sounds excellent. Yeah, that reminds me of a quote that we are the universe experiencing itself, and that's something that I feel very often on psychedelics. This concept of being the beginning and end of observation, of being the eyes in the universe that see the universe, being both part of and experiencing the universe at the same time. And I think that's something that psychedelics really help to put into perspective, but VR helps to put into perspective as well. It's that you said above effect.
Overview effect. Yeah,
overview effect. Where the universe is a thing that we're a part of, and being able to view the universe either spiritually through a psychedelic experience or virtually through a virtual reality experience, I think can lead to some really positive changes in people's lives. I know it's led to positive changes in my own life.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, there is a lot of research going on that is sort of has some conceptual overlaps also with the effects of psychedelics, because many people, when they take or have had a psychedelic experience, I mean, like those alcoholics you mentioned, what's probably has happened there is that they have seen themselves as, I mean, in a different way, in a different relation to the world, and this has sort of, it was the old guy who had the had the addiction. There is something new now, and in VR you also have the possibility to, I mean, in a less radical way, but you have the possibility to change one's body, and this in turn can be identified with like virtual embodiments, and they have evidence that this is changing people's states with, for instance, in terms of implicit racial bias, if you're embodied in another like colored avatar, or also violent offenders, if they are placed in sort of less powerful bodies and having people threaten them, they are more able to recognize when others feel threatened by themselves. And in terms of if you have lived, say, perhaps something common like 20 years, and you've always been this person that are developing and you're getting to know yourself, and you have a fixed identity, and when you rupture that, which psychedelics really can do, it ruptures that, and you're seen as something new in relation to a world that is different. Then, it's a fresh fact.
I referenced the word ego before, and it sounds like what you're referring to is ego death, right? That loss of your external identification, resulting in only your instinctive or true nature. And that's something that I totally see what you're saying. In that experience when I took that acid and, had tripped in VR, lost conception of the world outside of virtual reality. I was that avatar. That was who I was. That was all I knew. And having that kind of experience in a body that wasn't my own, and was just a random geometrical shape too. It wasn't intentional, like it sounds like these studies were, was something incredibly interesting. I believed I could fly because I could fly. That's just something that existed, and it was very neat. Not because I could fly, but because now in my memory I remember being able to fly. That's something that was a part of my life for a brief period of time. And I think psychedelics and VR both provide the stage for those sorts of experiences of truly walking in shoes that aren't your own. I'm a teacher as well, and I've been thinking a lot about virtual reality as a forum for education, especially with everything going on right now with quarantine, coronavirus, etc. And where maybe 10 years ago we would not have been able to teach from home, wouldn't have been able to work from home. The world just kind of would have locked down. And I wonder if 10 years from now, if something like this happens again, we'll use VR instead of a laptop. At what point in the future will we use VR instead of a laptop to interface? I think there's a ton of application for teaching, education, therapy, work in virtual reality.
Yeah, there definitely is. I was lucky enough to, I work as a VR researcher. I'm doing my PhD on VR, and what I actually was lucky to study at the time when the lockdown started was interviewing in VR. So I had just sent out the VR headsets to participants and was able to complete the interviews. And there is something to communicating in VR. I prefer it over Skype or Zoom, even though the avatars may be weird, etc. It's to me it feels much better, and there is also, in terms of the studies that I did, my participants, they sort of used the environment actively in the discussion. Of course, we were interested in what kind of experiences they had in that exact environment, so they could reference and point, and this I used in that way, and we did like this, and also just nonverbal communication works better, and there is this social presence,
Yeah, I remember the first time I went to shake someone's hand in VR just as a joke,
Yeah.
and the weight of the controller moves in your hand, and my jaw dropped because it felt like I was shaking someone's hand. It's something that you can't experience over 2D.
Yeah, it's true. So, socially interacting while on psychedelics. You mentioned the trip you had on acid. And that takes a while. What did you get to try?
Man, I spent forever watching those Wave VR visualizers, and what's cool about them is you go into these visualizers, which are cool. It's always good music. It's always, amazing effects. And there are almost always people that go in with you. And there's a little lobby beforehand and afterward where people talk about it, and they're like, "Oh my God, do you remember when that happened?" And
Cool.
you can draw in the air and put off poppers and stuff like that. And just having those social interactions, it really felt like being in a line for a movie theater and then exiting the movie theater afterward. But people are much more open in VR without social consequences being quite the same. You can always leave a lobby. So just being able to actually meet people, have interactions with people. Sometimes people tag along with you, follow you around for a bit. You follow them around, they'll show you something cool that you didn't know about. It's a very legitimate interaction. It's a very true interaction. And I think the internet in general offers those kinds of true interactions, but especially virtual reality. Simply because they feel so much more real in the third dimension.
Yeah. There is also this sense that, we talked about loss of ego or ego death, and there is, I'm often reading about this philosopher who has written some on ethics of virtual reality, which is called Thomas Metzinger, and he is very into meditation and so on. And he has released a book called Being No One, I think. And there is a sense in which being in VR is being no one. Right now, you are not a particular identity. I've never met you outside VR. I don't know your name. I don't know where you live, and nobody else does as well. And there is a sense
I do look
that
like this, though.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Then this will be much more sensational than we thought. But yeah, there is. When one is not adding anything to one's identity, when one is not gaining some sort of social, yeah, this isn't a plug for the Woodsman 816E. This is just for the thing itself. This isn't a means to an end. It's just what it is. And there is maybe something about that in VR as well, that you can just meet up. You are that. You are not something else. You don't have an image or a system or a history or a relationship. And yeah, I can imagine it being very freeing in that sense.
Exactly. That's what VR chat exists to do, right? Otherwise, people would just go to bars. VR chat exists to bring people together without those social constraints. It's just a venue to communicate with other people, and that kind of communication, when you're in that state of not having anything to lose by being honest, is really neat. It's very neat. Yeah. Oh, to continue your question, I spent a lot of time in Minecraft as well. Just phenomenal. Just off exploring, and set out on expeditions, see what this gigantic world has to offer. And I spent some time with Google Paint as well, where you paint in 3 dimensions.
Yeah, Tilt Brush. That's really nice.
That's the one.
Yeah, it's something about being just starting from total darkness and and just drawing whatever.
Okay. Put on music, and whatever you're creating can react to the music. It's very neat.
Yeah, I think that we should. I'll take your tip about music visualizers, and because I've heard a lot about it, and mostly from browsing RiftIntoTheMind, the subreddit, to where people advise what is good for tripping, and combination of these. And I have a lot on my list, but one that I've started have you tried the Microdose VR? Have you heard about that one before?
No, I have not. Well, I've seen it on the RiftVR, but I haven't read into it.
Yeah, I think they have a beta test or something going on where you can get a key. I know that they delivered out a key during the like COVID-19, which of course is still going on. That was called just Corona, I think, in caps lock. So people can try that. Don't blame it if it doesn't work. But yeah, we should check out that one. It's supposed to be really good. I know that they've been to like festivals for a long time, for several years. So I think they're really dedicated to making that platform a really good one.
That's very neat. That's very neat. That's a lot of the way VR is like user created, which always has its ups and downs.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a similar vibe of those EDM style concerts. Although I'll say the music is pretty varied. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing about VR, and yeah, I mean, of course, ups and downs, but that those who are making the applications are enthusiasts. There isn't yet the very big market, and so you at least get proximity towards what people want and are burning with enthusiasm about, sort of directly fed into the design.
Yeah. Well, it really feels like the early days of the internet, right? Where people who had computers were people who really wanted to have computers. And the communities that formed there were always enthusiasts, building their own communities out of whatever they could figure out. That's what VR feels like right now. Is big companies are starting to dip their toes into it, but the vast majority of content is made by people who, aren't expecting to get rich off of it.
Yeah, it's true, and I mean, it's interesting to think of this is really the start of this medium, and what kind of things will people create? I mean, people didn't foresee social media when the internet came. Of course, it might not be something different in VR because, I mean, Facebook is to a large extent at least running the show. But I think that if I had a lot of money, I would buy stocks in VR chat, if that is even possible, because social VR is going to be huge and they have a solid footing.
Yeah, like I said, I've never felt more like the future than, the first time I put on a VR headset and, like, you get it. You immediately get it. It's very, very immersive. It really is a different medium. The first time I tried an iPad, I didn't get it. It was something that it was like, okay, so it's like a small computer or a big phone. But with VR, there's really no comparison like that you can make. Like a three-dimensional computer, maybe. It's something very different, and there's a lot of unexplored potential.
Yeah, there is this automatic benefit due to its just very basic concept of I like to say that it's mediating its content like in the format of reality. It's presenting, I mean, there is of course with any medium there is some sort of abstraction of its information, but in virtual reality this abstraction is made to seem transparent, so the content appears as if it is not being presented through a medium. And of course, that you felt that in its most extreme form, right? Making it more immersive with the psychedelics. So all form of mediation is, of course, it's there. It's defining the experience, both mediation through the psychedelic and through the VR. But both of these are mediating it as real. So yeah, it's an intense thing.
Yeah, it's really a piece of technology that I think the world has yet to really wrap its head around. I would say that psychedelics are in a similar place right now. What with that research, what with decriminalization of mushrooms in Denver and all psychedelic natural plants in Oakland, and the U.S. having such a staunch stance on drugs normally. We really might be at a place where psychedelics are similarly breaching into the realm of public acceptance. It's interesting to see these two superficially very different fields expanding and receiving public attention as they are right now.
Yep.
So there's a great documentary on Netflix that just released called "Have a Good Trip," where if you, I don't know if you have checked it out yet. It came out maybe
I've
a week
just
ago.
heard about that.
It's
It was released. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even
But,
that is cool.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a documentary about celebrities who are just talking about trips that they've had, and there's a wide variety of people talking about a wide variety of trips. And that's something that, again, I don't think could have been a thing 10 years ago. I think it would have been blocked, it would have failed, Netflix wouldn't have paid for it. It's interesting to see these things develop as quickly as they are.
Yep. There is, and these things are contributing to culture's acceptance and norms in the society having, just having Netflix and doing something about it. I mean, the other thing which also was really nice that happened, I guess that was last year, but the Michael Pollan's book, which I can't really recall what it was called, but these things, respected people or institutions going and say, oh, hey, it's not that bad, check it out. And it's not just that it's not bad, it's really, really exciting. It's some of the most interesting things existing on planet Earth. It's very radically different in experiential terms from our everyday reality. So it will be interesting to see what state will it have in 10 years, both VR and psychedelics.
Where to lead. Yeah, especially with with Valve picking up or releasing the Index and Half-Life Alyx, and then on the psychedelic side with marijuana being increasingly legalized in the United States and worldwide. These movements seem to be moving.
Yeah, Half-Life Alyx is quite big for VR actually, because I mean, even I've been a real VR enthusiast for quite a long time, at least maybe like 4 or 5 years, and I have to be honest. I mean, of course, I hoped the best for VR gaming, and it was always awesome with these small indie games and doing that. But I always wondered, how would it be to have a full game in VR? I just wasn't convinced because I had never experienced it. I thought that they would figure it out one day, but that it would be as good as Half-Life Alyx was. It is really good. It's a really good game. There are very few games that I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to play this again soon. But Half-Life Alyx made me think that.
And there are plenty of games out there made for VR by big companies that are just kind of gimmicks, like Fallout 4 VR.
Yeah, it sucks.
Or Skyrim VR, where it's not that much worse than the original game or whatever, but it's not a VR game.
Yeah,
it's not something that's intended to immerse you. It doesn't have that accessibility that you were talking about with the you don't need menus, you don't need loot sorting and things like that. And Half-Life Alyx Boneworks is another game like that take advantage of the medium, that are designed for it.
Yeah, I never even thought about that with the inventory and stuff, but of course they dropped that. I mean, you had the pockets in each of your hands, and these are of course conscious decisions which they've worked through with users, and I guess I've never really analyzed what it's. I mean, that's of course just one of the things, but it was good.
It's a cool game, and it's one of the first VR games that made the breach into the public domain. Where people were talking about it who didn't own VR. Boneworks was very exciting for people who owned VR, but not many people, I think, bought into VR. Hit that initial price point. In order for a game like Boneworks, whereas Half-Life Alyx it's Half-Life. Yeah,
and a lot of angry people, of course, been waiting for a new Half-Life game for ages, and they use it as but that's very understandable as well. They've always been interested in doing something new with each game sort of being revolutionary in some way or another. So it totally makes sense.
Yeah, and Valve has always been interested in pushing technological limits. I saw an interview with I can't remember his name, but Gabe Newell's son,
Oh,
speaking about the future of virtual reality. And of course, Gabe Newell's son is, he's not a official representative of Valve or anything like that, but he is Gabe Newell's son. And what he was talking about was the future of neural interface as an evolution of VR. And according to him, he said that they were already at the point within Valve where they could functionally cure people of PTSD with a strap-on neural interface device. And he said within 5 to 10 years, they would have a device available which you could have a surgery for and experience a full neural interface. Search the internet from your brain, enter into a VR world from your brain. He said within 10 to 15 years, they should have a wireless version. Now, he could have just been saying these things for publicity. Again, he wasn't an official representative of Valve, but I do certainly think that's where this is all going. And one day that's where it all leads to an interface with a virtual world to the point where it's almost indistinguishable from the physical world.
that's super interesting. There is some, it's not necessarily very the same technology, but in terms of brain and computer interfaces, I've been to some academic conferences where they use it like in combination with EEG headsets, which are visualizing your brain waves as your external reality. And that seems really cool because, I mean, imagine that on psychedelics, which when your brainwaves are going haywire already. And maybe I'm interested in whether you then can pick up like how you're feeling outside, and you get into this like synchronous loop between what's happening inside your brain and outside your brain, and eventually maybe you're synchronizing it and the one is affecting the other. It can probably lead to some interesting experiences.
Yeah, feedback loop. Yeah, you thought loops were challenging on psychedelics. What if your thought loops were made visual as well? That's very interesting.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's especially interesting because, well, I was going to say because the majority of research seems to point to the way psychedelics work as stimulating your brain to functionally produce more neural connections than it normally produces, to fire more neurons more quickly than normal. And when you look at that under an MRI or any form of CAT scan, it's just the brain lighting up intensely.
Yeah.
So I think you're absolutely right. That would be fascinating with a headset that visualizes these EKG scans.
Yeah, I mean, one of the experiences which were sort of produced in order to facilitate for relaxation, I'll put a link in the description to the study, if I remember it, here on YouTube. But this was presented at CHI, Conference on Human Factors in Computing, in 2018. And then they had these, it was an underwater experience, and they had these jellyfish react according to biometrical signals in order to induce this feedback loop. And I also know of some other one by a guy called Sertmidis or something, which was more psychedelic abstract patterns, also from biometric signals, in order to promote pre-sleep, a state of pre-sleep. But I'm wondering, the thing that you mentioned, Gabe Newell's son mentioned, sounds a bit like the Elon Musk Neuralink thing. With is it have you heard about that?
Vaguely, and it doesn't seem too far off from it, and that's exactly what I mean, where I think that's where this technology is going eventually, in the same way that we see autonomous cars developing in 10 different forms, because everybody knows that's kind of going to be the future as soon as we can get there.
Yeah, and except for speech, I mean, in input into VR, I mean, in terms of typing and browsing the internet, that is quite cumbersome. So having a direct link there could definitely be beneficial.
Absolutely. Yeah, and being able VR already can feel like a dream, right? Where you're in this other place and you have control over it, but it doesn't have the same level of realism that a dream looks like. You know, if you look too closely at the table, you can see that it's an animated object. So being able to link to your brain's own processing power and your brain's ability to know what a table looks like would be very interesting. I think we could see a lot of really realistic simulations developed. We'd love to see the application for for education, being able to take students to the Battle of Agincourt would be pretty incredible. Have all those details generated for that experience.
Yeah, it's really good for cultural heritage as well. So how are you in terms of like dystopian views on the future? I'm usually very optimistic, etc. So I have to include someone else. Maybe they have some. Are you worried about VR technology at some point?
I wouldn't be one of the first to get that surgery, but I would certainly follow it with great interest.
Yeah.
I think there are. Whenever you're messing with the brain, there's the potential to mess up with the brain, and that can have a very serious effect. But I think ultimately where this ends up isn't with some, Star Trek race of cyborgs or something like that. It's with an intentional addition to what it means to be a human. Just like the cell phone was an intentional addition to what it means to be a human.
Yeah, because that's a really good point. It's not like we don't have relationships with computer. It's just in a particular form of relationship where we are holding it in our phones or now mounting it on our heads. We are spending time with computers all the time, and something which we've also written a bit about on. This YouTube channel is started out as a text blog really on VR and philosophy, which is called Matrice, and we have a blog piece there on the virtually extended mind, and cell phones are extensions of our mind, according to this one philosophical view that we are outsourcing our cognitive abilities to our cell phones, and that they are literally constituting our minds in ways, and VR is doing this as well. And they are specifically saying this in their philosophical paper, like, is there an actual difference if it was physically located inside our heads or not? And according to their position, no. So yeah, I agree with your point.
And it makes sense because the eyes exist as a way to put stuff into the brain anyway.
Yeah.
So if you're blind and able to absorb information without your eyes, that doesn't mean you're a cyborg either.
That's true.
It just means that you've utilized a variety of senses. Yeah. I'm curious, have you ever studied a philosophical concept, the history of the future?
The history of the future? No, but that sounds really interesting. What different ways that people perceive the future throughout the times or conceptualize it?
So, a little bit of that, a little bit. So it's a couple of concepts combined, and the first is that concept exactly. How did people like Immanuel Kant view the future? How did he think we would live as humans today? Which is absolutely fascinating as a thought experiment itself, but what the history of the future eventually comes to is how can we view the present the same way we view history, and how can we view the future the same way we view history. And it's something that I try to do whenever thinking about those futuristic concepts of where is VR going, the big what ifs like that. Is if VR was developed 100 years ago, how would we view it now? In probably the same way we view a major influential piece of technology that was developed 100 years ago, like the car or the airplane, as a piece of technology that we've so thoroughly integrated into our lives that it's difficult to imagine being without, but not as a part of humanity.
That's a great way, yeah.
If I want to go to another country, I can do that, and I don't even have to think twice about it because of the technology that enables that. but it's not something that I have to do, or not something that is essentially human to do.
Yeah, that's a really smart way of thinking, because then you are not attributing to future some sort of mystical element of it not being there already. You can sort of review the future as yeah, okay, I like that. Yeah. That seems like a
Kant has
really
a great
useful
book on it
approach.
called The History of the Future.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll definitely try to utilize that a bit in my thinking. That's really fascinating, actually, because we have a tendency to, yeah, I mean, reality is sort of mundane.
We view the world as we view the world as past, present, and future, right? As these are the things that have happened. These are the things that are happening. These are the things that might happen. When in a universal sense, the starlight that we see is ancient history. But we view it as the present, and that's a matter of perspective. If we're a million light years closer, we would view it as the same way, but it would be equally ancient. Our evolved, in my opinion, our evolved sense of past, present, and future exists to allow us to place ourselves and predict, which is kind of what our evolved big brains is for, is predicting what's going to come next, predicting small things like, is there a lion in those bushes, but big things like, should I eat this food or save it for later? And we use the past as evidence for that. I think it's a little bit of a glitch in the human, psyche, that we separate things into past, present, and future. It's something a lot of Zen philosophers talk about too. The concept of letting go of the extra significance we place on the past and future, and existing present in the moment. It's the whole concept of mindfulness.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I mean, we are definitely constituted temporally as human beings, and I read a great book on time, because, I mean, regarding psychedelic experience, people's impression of time is also radically changing. It becomes way less meaningful. But the book I read was The Order of Time by Carlos Ravelli, and I was interested in only coming from philosophy, which I also viewed time as a way of perceiving the world that is inherently human. It's not necessarily something that resides out there in the physical universe. So I was interested, and I felt very strongly convinced about this. So, okay, I better read some physicists. And Carlos Ravelli wrote this book, The Order of Time, that basically says the same thing. We can't find time anywhere. There is very little difference between, I mean, yeah, it was a really mind-bending book, and I didn't understand all of it, but it's a really good book. And yeah, what you're saying, oh no, that was really a cool idea.
Yeah, I was a big fan of it when I first encountered it, and continue to be. Yeah, it's interesting to me. What I'm thinking about now is how you mentioned the bending of time and how it related to psychedelics as well. And in a true ego death, you do lose 100%. You don't understand what time is, because in a true ego death, you let go of the concept of words. You let go of the concept of ideas and notions, and you exist, on your instincts and your feelings, and you exist in truly the present moment. You lose the past, you lose the future. It's only the present moment. And it's a very pure state, I guess, because what you live is a life where you don't worry about the future, you don't stress about the past. You exist only to do what you're doing, and it's very, very fulfilling. And of course, ego death rarely lasts longer than maybe an hour if you've really gone far. But it's something that every person who experiences it, really treasures, or at the very least, really remembers.
Yeah. Yeah, that is super fascinating. I wonder how yeah, there has been some attempts, of course, but it's it's a really stupid thing to try to emulate with the VR medium, because it's not the same at all in terms of how you can radically disattach yourself from your thoughts, because time isn't something that we are seeing in the external world either. It's sort of a way that we are mapping, like we use the clock as imagery, from which we sort of attach different this happened then, and we have some different spatial configurations. But yeah, there are some ways that people have reduced the felt experience of time by manipulating some sort of basically the speed at which you're moving, but it's not the same.
Yeah. Time is the ruler by which we measure our lives.
Yeah,
right? And I think the closest I've gotten in VR is speaking to the concept of like a flow state, which, you know, a game like Doom is famous for. But even when you're playing Doom and you enter that flow state of just, you know, reacting without thinking, without analyzing, just, you know, doing what's right time after time after time, it's very satisfying, but you're still looking at a computer screen. And there are borders of your vision that are not this game, and there are external noises that are coming in. I think VR really lends itself to flow states. Existing in something like the way VR, where you're seeing the world around you and it's happening, everything's happening around you, it's very easy to lose track of the fact that you know, your actions exist functionally. Something like tilt brush as well, when you're like actively involved in that, you know, act of creating art, it's easy to lose track of the fact that you're not creating something physical, you're creating something virtual, to enter into that flow state. And I think a flow state is really a very meditative state to be in. It reminds me of circumambulation that's practiced by some ascetic Buddhists, especially in Japan. And circumambulation is the process of walking in circles until you become enlightened. And it's often around Mount Fuji. People will walk around Mount Fuji for years and years and years, sometimes 10, 15, 20 years they'll spend walking around this mountain in circles. And in that process, they're doing something, but the idea is to forget that you're doing anything for any other reason than, you know, the fact that it's happening. Accept what's happening, forget the future, forget the past, and exist in, you know, this moment. All I have to do is walk. That's it. And I think VR lends itself to that kind of almost meditative flow state, where you know, I'm doing this thing, I'm creating this painting, or, you know, experiencing this visualizer, and that's it. That's all you're doing. You're doing the, you know, most productive thing you can right now. Especially with the removal of the outside world and, you know, reminders of consequences. There's my mail on the counter. There's that you know, the trash that needs to be taken out, etc.
Yeah, providing some new, fresh environment that isn't laden with your old ways of thinking and your old habits that are sort of sedimented in your home and your work environment, or even your city. I mean, all the memories from that cafe, that nightclub, or whatever. Meeting something new in combination with, like traveling. I mean, it's basically what VR is. Traveling really also helps to freshen up people's minds.
Exactly. Taking a trip, even.
Yeah. That's why it's called that. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Up until the first time I tried it, I always thought it was taking a trip, because it was like you were going to trip and fall, and it'd be like, whoa, you know. But No, it's you're taking a trip to another place. You're going somewhere else.
Yeah,
and
journey.
It's somewhere else where those things drop away.
Yeah. Yeah, a journey, definitely. Hey, this was super fun. Thanks a lot for meeting up. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So, yeah, everyone, Rift into the Mind, a cool subreddit if you're interested in these topics. Any last comments or reflections?
Oh, I just think anyone who's listening should check out that documentary. Have a good trip.
Yeah.
If you're interested in what a psychedelic experience looks like.
Cool, I'll check it out as well.
Thank you again for having me. It's been fascinating to talk about all this.
Yeah, it was really cool. All right, cheers.
Okay.